and welcome to these creator catch-ups. This time round, we're talking to the wonderful Jim Campbell, Letterer to the Stars. I'm Stacey Whittle, and let's jump right in there, Jim. Do you want to tell us? Well, do you want to give us a little brief first overview of what a letterer actually does for somebody who doesn't know?
It's as simple and as complicated as it sounds like, really. Basically, the writer writes a script, the artist draws the script, and then at some point down the line, the script lands on the letterer's desk, and it's their job to just literally put the writer's words onto the artist's art. But it is as simple as it sounds, but at the same time, it's not, because you have to do that with an eye to the way that the page is constructed, with the way that the reader's eye needs to follow the story around the page, sometimes attempting to fit large amounts of text in the space that the artists haven't left any room for you to put in. And it's, you know, it's constantly interesting and it's constantly challenging. But if you do it well, the reader should never really notice you were even there. Which must
be a bit of a bummer, really, for being recognised.
The better you get, the less people notice it. So it's
This sounds like a mug scheme.
Well, I know it's fantastic. It's really it's like in any job, you know, you get days and sometimes weeks where you kind of think, well, really, I might have had enough of this. This is cheesing me off a bit. And I have to say, every single time I do that, my wife has instructions that whenever I reach a certain point of whinging about it, that she's to remind me how completely miserable I was in my last proper job. I don't no, I do comics, for Christ's sake. You know, okay, I might get a bit annoyed sometimes, but I do comics. You know, at the moment, like once a month, I get to work on a Grant Morrison book. And if you told me 20 years ago, you'll get to do a Grant Morrison book, I'm like, what?
Well, that must be really exciting.
You know, I've done John Wagner, I've done like John, and I've done, you know, so with Carlos, and you know, and it's just, you have to pinch yourself sometimes. If you lose sight of the fact that there is still that little, like, you know, 10, 11-year-old fanboy inside you, and if you don't try and connect with them every once in a while and just go, yeah, I can't believe it, yeah. Then, you know, I think you do very quickly become jaded. But it's a dozen years now, and I'm still every once in a while, like, you know, just now, it's only the last sort of like 2 or 3 months, you know, this book by Grant landed in my lap, and I was like, wow, it's Grant Morrison. Ah.
So can you tell us a bit about that? What you're working on? What are you working on right now?
Well, that's so many things. But I mean, it's always difficult because I will forget somebody, and then they'll be offended that I haven't mentioned their project. I mean, I'm doing bulk of my US work is for Boom, and they give me lots of stuff, and so I think all of their Firefly related stuff, which is fantastic. Again, I've been a fan of Firefly since it came out on Sci-Fi, whenever it was, 2000.
I remember.
You know, so that's fantastic, and obviously I've just got this. It's called Proctor Valley Road by Grant Morrison and Alex Child, who's a UK screenwriter.
Right.
But again, you know, that's fantastic, and like I say, there's a huge geek thrill to that. I do Titan's Blade Runner books, which are excellent. They're really, really good. And they've got the main Blade Runner title's got written by Michael Green. I've forgotten his name, but anyway, he was co-writer of Blade Runner 2049. So, you know, so it's quite legit, and those are excellent. And obviously, you know, for the last year and a bit, well, nearly 2 years now, I've been working for 2000 AD, and that's just, you know, that's just my little like my little inner fanboy. It's just like, yeah.
Because I know you through 2000 AD fandom, don't I? That's how we got to be friends very years ago as well. So it must be, you've worked for 2000 AD before, though, haven't you, in the past?
I've worked for Rebellion before.
Right.
I've done all sorts of bits and pieces around the prog, if you see what I mean. I've done multiple Roy of the Rovers books. I helped them with the remastering of the Charlie's War books that they put out. I've done sort of like some of their Sniper Elite tie-ins. I've done all sorts of bits and pieces around it. But barring one very hasty emergency fill-in when Simon Boland's appendix burst, which resulted in a phone call from a telepathic communication from Tharg. Tharg doesn't use the phone. To say that the Boland droid is malfunctioning. Could you possibly knock out an episode of Strontium Dog by about this time tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, of course I can. Then I thought, that's probably going to be it. That's it. But no, I was invited immediately after the last Thought Bubble we actually got to do. Just what, that 2019? Yeah, we didn't do one last year, 2019. About Matt, Tharg, not Matt. Tharg wanted to have a chat with me on the Saturday, and unfortunately I was quite ill on the Saturday. Alcohol unrelated, I was quite annoyed about that. I'd been ever so sensible on the Friday and gone home at a very sensible time and managed to give myself food poisoning off a supermarket sandwich, and so I was unavailable for the whole Saturday, which meant that they couldn't talk to me. I got an email on the Monday or the Tuesday morning saying, do you want to come work for 2018? I was like, I don't know. I don't go all right then. Yes.
So is that kind of a dream gig for you?
Well, that's why I wanted to get into comics when I was 10. And most people grow out of that stuff by the time they're about 15, and I never did. And so, by sort of my very late teens, into my early 20s, I made some progress. Little bit of progress in the small craft drawing, but to be honest, I was never that good an artist. And some progress writing, but I realized once I started to get professional commissions, I realized as a writer, I was too slow. It's just, it's nice. And there's still an itch in the back of my mind that I want to scratch for writing. But I had to realistically say, you are never, ever going to earn a living at this because you are too slow. You'll starve before you generate enough material.
You have heard of George R.R. Martin?
I have, yes. And to be honest, so comics kind of took a backseat then. And I just sort of like fandom. And then I sort of, in the sort of the back end of the 90s, I sort of engaged with that was sort of like the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I sort of thought, well, I'm not going to make much money. And in the back end of the 90s, I sort of engaged with the small press. And by that stage, I was a professional graphic designer. And because I wasn't directly much involved with comics, I hadn't realized that lettering was already going down quite a digital route, and a lot of it was being done on computers by that stage, because I wasn't reading a lot of comics at that point, but I was quite involved with the small press. And the UK small press, especially sort of the back end of the 90s into the early 00s, was a fantastic scene. There were so many books and there were so many really good artists, and they're putting stuff out, and the art was fantastic and the lettering was terrible. It's absolutely awful. And I literally just thought to myself, well, I'm a graphic designer. I reckon, I know how to use all this software. I'm pretty sure I could simulate, the lettering process on a computer rather than doing it by hand. And so I sort of started offering to do it for small press people. And it's one of those things, every once in a while, somebody from the small press gets a gig with a professional outfit and they say, oh, well, this guy lettered me in the small press and I really liked his work. And that's literally how I got in, was every few months I'd get a 4 or 5 page paying gig in an anthology somewhere, and it very, very slowly turned into sort of a usable second income. And then at some point, after a couple of years or a few years, I suddenly thought, do you know what? I'm making nearly as much money doing this as I'm doing the office job that I absolutely hate. So I thought, no, I'm going to, and then it sort of thought, well, okay, so I'm not going to be the next Alan Moore, because clearly, writing's not something that I can make a living at, but I can work in comics. I can make a living working in comics. And I thought, well, there's worse things to do than that, and it's been literally, although you say, you get the occasional bad day or the occasional bad week, literally the only regret that I have is I didn't do it 10 years earlier.
I think it's quite interesting as well, Jim, is that that you're never going to get pigeonholed into one genre or stuck anywhere, can't you? You can just move around and do whatever, can't you? So that must be fun.
That is quite nice, and yeah, I mean, I do a huge variety of stuff. Like I say, I do. It sounds when I'm saying about Blade Runner and Firefly, I do licensed stuff, but I do an awful lot of young adult stuff, which I enjoy enormously, and it's quite heartening because if you stay in certain circles, you hear nothing but doom and gloom about the future of the comic industry. And it tends to be people who basically go to specialist comic shops and buy monthly comics by the big two. And they go, oh no, the comic industry's doomed, the comic industry's doomed. And I think to myself, well, your bit of the comic industry might be doomed, mate. But, there's books out there that are selling numbers that, Spider-Man and Batman could only bloody dream of. And I keep sort of saying to people, look, I don't know what numbers Giant Days sold, but I do know that if you looked at the ICV2 published the diamond sales charts.
Yeah, the diamond sales.
I know that if you looked at those, very occasionally Giant Days as a monthly would appear in the bottom of the top 300. I mean, about 1,800 copies a month. And it's like, well, the fact of the matter is, Boom published nearly 60 issues of that. So there's no way that they were doing that off the back of 1,800 copies a month. So clearly it was shifting a pile of trades. Because obviously, yeah, that's where the young adult market is. The monthly floppy it's really just a way of breaking up the commissioning costs, I think, for a lot of publishers. And certainly in the young adult market.
For young ones as well, that's a monetary thing, because they might not be able to afford to pay the costs of a monthly, but they can save up and buy a trade, or they can get trades for. My teen always asks for My Hero Academia trades for their Christmas and birthday presents and stuff. So there's that, isn't there, with the youngins?
Yeah, and a couple of books I worked on that started out as monthlies have dropped the monthly completely.
Yeah.
I started off doing a book for Boom called Fence, which is a gloriously gay book about male fencers at an all-boys school, which ran for 12 issues as a monthly. So they got 3 trades out of it. They might have been 15 issues, whatever it took to make 3 trades.
Right.
And at the end of the third, whatever how many months it took, they just canned it, and we're not selling enough, but we are comfortably selling enough to trade. So it just moved from being a monthly to just being they stick out a graphic novel once a year now, which is fantastic. And that's not the comic industry dying. That's just nobody wants to go to a comic shop and hang out with you guys and your Wolverines and Batmans, and they want to buy books about teenage gay fencers in an all-boys school.
Who knew this stuff was out there? I didn't know this stuff was out there.
It's fabulous. It's so unjudgmentally inclusive. It's not even hitting you over the head with this stuff. It's just like, these guys are gay, these guys aren't gay, and this guy's non-binary and this guy's trans, but it's never ever like, but you must think this about it. It's just like, they just are, and they're all just milling about, and nobody's down on anybody about this stuff. And you kind of think, no, if the world actually worked like that, that would just be lovely.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'm delighted.
I need to read this now.
to maintain it as an ongoing project, because it's just a nice thing to see, and it warms the cockles of my black old heart, to be honest with you, doing this young adult stuff. Because it is very easy to get mired in all the angsty grimdark, and
it is. That's why I had such a long Twitter break. I think that that's particularly bad for pulling you down can be really bad pulling. Yeah. In turn, everything is awful, rather than an everything is awesome.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, and so that's like, that it's, I do that. I do a couple of horror books for Vault, which have they've been fantastic. And like you say, I get to do so many things And it is very hard to get bored. I mean, with the best of them all, I can imagine as an artist, even your dream book, if you don't do anything else all month, every month for 2-3 years at a trot, I can imagine, no matter how much you wanted to draw Batman, I can imagine after you've drawn your 500th page of Batman, you might really be thinking, oh, Jesus Christ, not him again.
What's with his fucking cape?
I'm going to do mad with his ears. I'm just Bugs Bunny. There we go. It looks like Bugs Bunny now. I've changed the way Batman looks.
But then you would have to deal with the fallout on the interwebs. That would be awful. Imagine. Do you get much letter fallout on the interwebs?
Again, one of the nice things about being largely invisible is, occasionally, mostly it's just people. You can tell they're quite consciously trying to say something nice. To be honest with you, I think somebody's reminded them some way. They're doing a podcast about an issue that you worked on. Somebody goes, "Hey, about letter? Don't forget the letter." And they go, "Oh yeah, and the lettering was lovely."
That's my technique. Who's making that?
Which is fine, it's kind of it's like I don't even expect people to say anything about the lettering. It's just nice. It's what is maddening is that they don't. It's the number of publishers who put out solicits that don't have the lettering in the credits. Every time, like one of us moans on Twitter about seeing a review of a book, an advanced review of a book, and like we're not listed on the book that we lettered. Every time the reviewer will come back and say, "Well, look, we're really sorry, but the advanced copy that we got, there was nothing in the solicit information. For some reason, the credit page wasn't in there. We didn't know who lettered it."
Yeah.
And you kind of think, that's a little bit poor.
Yeah, that's not great, is it? That's not fair. Yeah, because see, this is the difficult thing about reviews as well, is that with a creative team and a reviewer, somebody's going to focus on one more than the other, and I think the others are always going to feel left out, whichever one that is.
Yeah,
I think 9 times out of 10, it's always going to be the letterer who's forgotten, isn't it? So
we don't mind not actually being in the review, but it's when you'll see it listed out and there's the writer art, and then there's no listing in the review for the letter, and you think, well, where was it? It always turns out that the publisher forgot to include it in the solicits or in the review copy.
It's not that reviewers don't pick that up and find out, because I would have done that. Because the other thing though is that if the letter is not listed, I often think then the artist has done it themselves.
Yes.
That happens quite often. So then the artist is getting credit for something that they didn't do either, which isn't fair. Because that's always my assumption. If there's not a letterer listed, then the artist has done the lettering.
No, that's fairly reasonable. I must admit, I think there must be a certain number of reviewers out there who must get quite bored with the fact that I pop up on their little their links to their Twitter links to their reviews, usually just to say thank you for the very kind review, but I have to point out that I didn't do the sound effects, because I'm so scrupulous. If the artist has drawn the sound effects, and if they as often as not, if a reviewer is going to mention the sound effects, it usually turns out it's because the artist drew them.
And you can't let that stand.
And I can't let them credit me for it. I'm just incapable of doing it. I have to pop up on there and go, "Excuse me, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't me. I didn't do them."
So what do you think is the most difficult aspect of your, reviewers aside, what's the most difficult aspect of your job?
I'll be honest with you, it's deadlines. It's always deadlines. The letterer is more or less the last person whose hands these pages go through before it hits the printing press. There's the pre-press guy at the publishers who pulls it all together, and probably some production guy does a bit like last minute checking. But essentially, out of the people that actually make the comic, we're the last people, and we're usually hard up against that print deadline.
Yeah. And
what that means is that our deadline can't be moved. There's no wiggle room in ours. And every time colorist or an artist or whatever decides they want to take another day, I understand that they want it to be the best it can possibly be.
Yeah.
The writer, having seen the lettered pages, suddenly decides, I don't like the way that scene works. I'm going to take a day, I'm going to rewrite the scene, and I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind lettering it again. It's like, yeah, but you don't seem to understand that your deadlines can be moved, but the way that your deadlines can be moved is every single day that you add on to your deadlines, this day comes off mine. Because mine can't be, because mine is hard up against the print slot. And the print slot isn't going to move. That's when it goes on the press.
So does that mean that you're constantly at a desperate deadline then? Because that sounds like that.
Because a lot of publishers are they try and build the time in, but I understand. I understand. I've attempted to draw comics myself, and I am constantly in awe that anybody ever wants to do it as a way of making a living. It seems to me the most fantastically inefficient way of making money from artistic talent. I've tried, and I'm just paralyzed by it because there's so many things you have to be good at as a comic artist. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you get the script and you have to break it down to a page. You have to do the actual proper comic storytelling. And then you have to think about it like a film director, and you have to think about lighting and camera angles and how that's all going to work. And then you have to work out what these costumes people are wearing and make them look, sensible and believable within the context of whatever environment you're doing. Then you have to design their bloody hairstyles. And you think, oh my God, how have you not had a nervous breakdown by now? So I don't want to make it sound like I was, bloody comic artist just taking the piss all the time, but it is a case that publishers try not to do this to us, but the nature of the creative process is somebody always thinks, do you know what, if I just take an extra day, this could be better. And they're right, it probably is better, but it's better at the expense of my blood pressure, basically.
Who was it? Was it Ron Smith who did the time
the alarm clock
thing?
Yeah.
I love that story.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I have the virtual equivalent on my computer. That's how I work.
Really?
I've got a little thing, a little timer on here, and it's not. And I think if you read the whole Ron Smith story, he actually says, it's not that. It wasn't like ping. That's it. I am not touching this page. It was ping. Move on to the next page. And then at some point at the end of the day, if you've got time to come back and do some extra work on this page, if you think it's not finished, fine, but don't, throw yourself off by doing that. And that's more or less how I try and work with this timer. I sort of have in my head, it's like, it gives me a 5-minute break. Every 25 minutes, it gives me a 5-minute break. So I take 10 minutes out of every hour to, stand up, go away from my desk, which is good at health and safety practice anyway. Make a cup of tea, go for a wee, whatever. But in my head, I'm sort of like, well, in order to get this book finished by the end of today, I know that in between every one of those alarms, I have to do 2 pages or whatever.
Right.
And so, well, okay, sometimes you can't. Sometimes pages are difficult. But as by the same token, sometimes pages are easy. And what that timer does is it keeps your mind in focus, because you get to an easy page and it takes you 5 minutes because there's like one caption and a sound effect on the whole thing, and you go, boom, I'm done. And you kind of go, right, I'll go off to Twitter and I'll fanny around for 10 minutes. Well, if you've got the timer reminding you that you're behind schedule, you go, no, this is 10 minutes that I've got back now that I can use to catch up on that page that took me twice as long as I expected it to this morning. And it's just a really useful way of keeping your mind focused, to be honest with you. I mean,
I think that's brilliant. I think otherwise, I think every single comic creator I've ever talked to is always about, it could have just been that little bit better, or I wish I'd done it like this, or I wish I'd had 5 more minutes. And it's interesting to know how that actually you control that, because I think it must be very difficult to say, no, it's finished.
Yes.
Be on the next
well,
one.
I mean, that is, to be honest, that is one of the luxury, not the luxury, one of the advantages of being where letterers are at this end, is that we don't have the luxury of fannying about with stuff. And yeah, I mean, I say fanning about like it's like, you know, it's like it's people aren't improving stuff. Yes, they probably certainly are improving stuff, but we just don't have that luxury, because at the end of the day, the editor, you know, just go, where is it? Where is it? You know, starting to panic now. We're printing this at 12 o'clock tomorrow. We kind of like the pages, please. And it's like, you know, okay, fine. You know, that's good enough. It's got to go, because the one thing it can't do is not print. It's
yeah, it must be quite something knowing that when you're sending your pages off, though, that's it. They're done. That's it. Nobody else is going to touch them. And that must be quite a nice feeling.
I used to work in book and magazine production, and I quite like it. I quite like having that much more direct connection between what I do and the physical thing that ends up in your hands.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I used to write, there was such a long lead time between you sending the script off. And yeah, this was like, you know, late 90s, so it was mid 90s. So it was all post. Everything was done in the post. There was very little stuff done electronically. So the lead times were that much longer, because, you know, you posted the script to the editor. The editor posted it to the artist posted the pages back. They got posted to the letter, and so, you know, the lead times on things were weeks and weeks and weeks, and then it went to the printers, and your comps would turn up months down the line. And to be honest with you, it was almost like looking at work somebody else had done, because it was so far in the this removed from you by that point, especially if it was a series, because by this stage you'd written like 8 more episodes, and it was so far in the past. I look at it sometimes, I think I don't actually remember writing that line. Admittedly, some of that was for the Judge Dredd magazine. That was because I hadn't written that line. David Bishop had written it for me, but yeah, it's quite nice to feel that immediate. It's you know, and also because everything's digital now, the whole process is concertinaed anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll send a job in for 2000 AD, and it's 2 weeks off print. There's a comp in my hand 2 weeks later.
Really, it's that quick.
Yeah, it's that fast.
Crikey, that is much tighter than I thought that it was.
Well, the whole electronic thing's concertinaed that timescale down now so much.
Yeah, and I think there is actually still an artist who posts stuff. I think Simon Davis still posts stuff. It was Simon Davis and Paddy Goddard until quite recently, but Paddy sends his stuff digitally now. But until very recent, but I think Simon Davis still sends his. I love knowing stuff like that. It's such a nerdy thing.
If you're Simon Davis, you can't you? I mean, I only own 2 pages of original comic art, and one of them is a page of Simon's, and it's just like.
Well, actually, I've got one of his little sketches. Can you see there where I'm pointing? It's that Anthony Crucius.
Oh yes, I can make
it out.
I
see it there, Simon Davis on there.
No, I've got lurking just over down there somewhere. I've never quite felt like we live here in this particular house since we moved into it, and so I've never quite felt comfortable putting shit on the walls. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's sort of somehow it's never, and so I bought Simon's the last Sinister Dexter page that Simon's drawn to date.
Right.
He thought it was probably going to be his final one. He was moving on to other things. And I've had it lovingly stored in a big envelope and board and properly protected and stuff, and never quite got around to putting it on the wall. So it was.
Oh, get it on the wall! Get it on the wall!
I don't know how Simon does it. Simon's pages are so reasonable. He was selling some of that Slane stuff that was absolutely gorgeous, and I was looking at it thinking,
it was gorgeous.
You really only want 120 quid for that, Simon? Are you insane? I'd pay you double that and not even bat an eyelid. It's amazing stuff.
It is. His stuff's gorgeous. It's glorious. But then a lot of the 2000 AD artists are glorious artists.
Yeah, they are.
It's nice to see your name on there now when reading the talks. I always go like, know him.
Every week I'm just like,
I love that as well, because of your job, Jim, that you're like, you know, like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, because I know you. Oh yeah, you know, my friend Jim just speaks Grant Morrison. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
You like the Kevin Bacon, you and Simon Boland are like the Kevin Bacons of
oh yeah, to be fair, yeah. I mean, yeah, letters, especially people say ones like us that do an awful lot of work. It's pretty easy to work your way through that. So now I'm just thinking, who
you should have
would
that
you
plenty
like
of cards, by the way.
Connect you to? It's
sorry.
Who would you like me to connect you to? It's
I just think you should get it on your card. You should just put like Jim Campbell, letterer. It's like the Kevin Bacon of comics. Ask me to dance if you dare. Well, do you know what? This has actually been so interesting and so fun, and I think I could talk to you for loads longer. But I did say these were going to be quite short, and I've absolutely loved this chat. And
it's been lovely. It's been absolutely brilliant.
I think it'd be nice to do another one actually for my podcast sometime, if you wouldn't mind, because I just think there's so much to talk about, and I appreciate that this isn't my podcast.
No, that's a lovely idea, Stacey. I mean, you pop me a message on Facebook or something, and we'll sort something out. It's fantastic.
That'd be wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's so nice to talk to you after all this time.
We have talked. We have met a few times in real life. You always ever have to leave because you've got a deadline. Be in the pub for a little bit and then go, oh, I'm going to have to go back.
Yeah.
I'll be back soon. Off you go. But yeah, it's been, Nelly didn't recognise you without the hat, because I think the last few times I saw you wearing the big hat. Yes,
I have to wear the hat because it's sort of a nice substitute having a personality. People just notice the hat. But you know, it's in the house. I'm not sure my wife would wear it. You know, she'd see me going upstairs to do this. What the fuck are you doing with your hat? What's wrong with you, man? Jesus, inside the house.
I thought your personality was grumpy old guy of the internet. I thought that was what was.
No, that was just because I was doing a job that I hated and I was stressed out of my brain and I was drinking too much. And so basically, what I was an angry drunk on the internet.
I said, I'm doing a good job of taking over from you, I think.
I'm trying to be a much nicer person. Well, it's not nicer. I don't know, I can manage nice, but certainly calmer. I think you're doing a great job. I think you're lovely. You know that. So I'm gonna wrap it up on that point and say thank you so much. Bless you.
Hopefully speak to you soon.
That's been fantastic talking to you, Stacey. I'll say I shall let you get on, and I shall go and do a little bit of work to do actually tonight. And yeah, if you want to sort something out for your podcast, that would be fantastic. Just pop me a message on Facebook, and we'll sort something out.
I'm gonna stop the recording, and then how do I do that? Shit.
I might be able to zap it from my end. Hang on, I can. Hang on, I shall.
I've got it.